Okay, today let's talk about Flask, a very easy web server. Right, Flask is the easiest web server for Python to create a web server. And the web server, if you look at one website, there's a web server behind that. It will provide the web services. Normally for us, we will use two different goals for web server. One is just build a website. Another one is provide RESTful API services, which is very useful data flow tool within the company to do different jobs. So let's go together. This is the Flask official documentation. You can look at documentation to get more information. But now, just follow me to start Flask. The first thing you need to do is go to your computer, install Python, install VS Code. If you don't have that, please install that. Then you can create a folder. Create a folder in anywhere, doesn't matter. Name it as a name that you know. My website. Okay, get into it. Normally, I'd like to open the folder in the VS Code. Right, open that in VS Code. So now this is a blank folder. The only thing we need to do is build a file called app.py. And this is the main file for Flask. And inside app.py, you need to do from Flask, import Flask. By the way, if you haven't installed Flask, please use your terminal to try to, you can open the terminal from here to do pip install Flask. I've already installed that, so it won't install for me, but you can do that step if you don't have Flask yet. So that's first thing. And once you've done that, you can do this code and say app equal to Flask. The name refers to the app, so doesn't matter. So this app means your server. So anything start within the app. So and the app must run on a place. Right, you can see the hint. It gives you some parameter to fill. For first is host. I would recommend you just use 0.0.0.0. That will give the access to the to other computers, especially when you do that on our server, right? Or you can do that in localhost. For the security issue, I will do that in localhost. But if you want to do that and share your server with others, please use the 0.0 instead of localhost. And here, port. You can use any port that is not being used. Try to avoid 80 or 8080. It will get conflicts on the server. So for example, here I want to say 1754. Right, that is a server. And this is the basic structure for Flask. And within Flask, but we didn't say what does this server to do, right? So in Flask, we use the root at app.root. So everyone is a location in your server's URL. But this one means the root of your website. Let's say that index and return my first website. Okay, that's it. You finish just with those few lines. You finish your website. Let's run that. Right now, you say the server is running on localhost 1754. So let's go to 1754 localhost 1754. Yeah, my first website. Yeah, successfully. Right. And here, change the localhost to And if you use this on the servers, instead of a localhost, you just say, for example, let's say 10.8.0.104, right? So you can do the same thing. Okay, let's do some change to see whether this one will change second website, right? It's just text. Save it. Okay, then we refresh this page. Second website. You see the change. If you open the debug mode, it will automatically restart the server. So for example, say auto refresh. Right, and now, well, you see the server will be out of fresh. But in the debug mode, it's better to put that in not run this way. Sometimes it will give you error. Depends on your environment. But for now, I think it's better to turn that off. Just restart manually. So. This is it. Let's refresh the server to see what is still good. It will get out of fresh. Okay, that's one thing you can do. Another thing is you have one page, right? If you go to any website, you may give different pages. You can jump to the home page, jump to the contact us or about us. Those. How to do that is just add a route here. For them, say the page. Like that page. Here, instead of return plain text, we can return HTML. So render template. Right, return render template. So here you can say page.html, whatever the file name it is, doesn't matter. But you need to name it with a very easy to identify way. So this is your HTML. We need to create that HTML on the server, which means your folder. You need to create another folder, which is called templates. Right. This is the place you store your HTMLs. So under the templates, create a file called page.html and put something into the HTML. Alarm. Put the alarm inside the header. Right, this is a page. This is an HTML file. This one will send the HTML file to your browser once you call the page instead of just by the localhost with your port. Let's restart the server. This time we refresh that server, we get the same thing, right? But if we go to the page /page, we will get this thing, right? This is HTML. This is HTML file. Okay, that's the basic use for regular. The rest of things you just need to change the page HTML. That's a front design thing. Okay, very simple, right? The third thing is we want to create an API, which you guys more interested about this. So we want to say API, right? Def API return. Normally for the RESTful API, we will return a JSON, and in JSON, but we cannot just directly transfer JSON back to the HTML. We have to make it to string. So JSONify this result. Okay, and then we restart server. So now we say API. Right. See, this is your data. This is data return. Okay. So here comes another question. You cannot just always send the same data for different requests. You want to say, for example, say we want to receive a URL to find a company in Neo, right? How do we do that? So first thing, you need to see the result, right? We have that variable here, but we didn't define that. So let's create that result. And the first thing, before we go here, let's keep it the same. Before we go here, let's make it easier for you guys. Let's change a little bit here, right? Let's change the text to hello, and give a parameter here, name. So if we want to interact with the user, we can say here we need another component. Is called request. Args equal to request args, and the name equal to args.get name. So what does this mean? This means you can after this URL, you can say send a parameter by the URL with a name, right? With a name, that is to say, you can say question mark name equal to my name. Let's say that. Okay. So you can do this way, and that arguments will send to here. You can use the get to get the value of the key, right? The key is the name, right? Here is name equal to Zach, so the value would be Zach, and return would be hello. Here you use the variable to replace this text. Okay, so let's try that. So if it's correctly, this one will give you hello Zach. Sorry. Name equal to hello Zach, right? If I say name equal to 123, you will say hello 123, right? That's how you interact with the user. And here we want to receive the URL. So we do the same thing. Args equal to request args, and URL equal to args to get a URL. And then we want to build a query equal to match C equal and reached at W website well w.url equal to the URL. Return c.name as name c.w.url as URL. Okay, this is your query, and we want to call that query from the easiest way to call Neo in Python is use the Python Neo, but I have a even better way is just import community tools, right? That's only for the internal use. So if you want to get that community tools, you need to be in our related to GitHub group, and that will give you the access to this tool. Or you can just contact me to give you the access. Okay, so once that's done, we need to build a graph. So community tools Neo connector, and result equal to the graph run the query and send back the data. By default, it's a JSON format. So instead of send back this static JSON, we can send the result. Okay, so that's it. Now let's refresh the page to see the magic. Okay, so we come back to here. First, let's say the API and question mark URL equal to, let's go define the website my VPN disconnected. Let's say ibm.com. ibm.com. Maybe it's not a good example, but let's try. Internal server error. Return. Oh, title, sorry. Return c.name. Refresh it. Let's say limited one to avoid the long time because IBM is too big. So let's refresh here. Yeah, it gives you the result. Let's find another URL here. Website. Or you can find any website. Let's for example, say it's a Chinese website. That's fine. Let's see what's the company name for this website. Yeah, name is CNZ, right? So with this, you can easily access. You have built a simple API for your Go. Only things you need to write a query, and sometimes after query result, you need to do some modification with the data. That will require you to understand the data and have some ability to work with the JSON. Okay, so yeah, that'll be how you create an API. The last thing I want to show you is like these templates. Why we call that templates here? For example, let's say if we want to use a page, use an HTML page to show the result instead of this just a JSON, we can do easily a page here. Let's copy this whole function, name it API page. Say API page here. The exact same thing. Only difference is we don't return JSON, we render a template. Render template. Say API page, right? And the result equal to result. But here what we want is we want to get the result name and URL, right? So the name if result name equal to result name and URL, right? So we put the name and the URL to here. Right, so by default we will say name URL equal to we don't need URL here. Just name actually. Name equal to not found. Okay, then we need to go to build this page. Go to build this page here. So API page.html. So here we want to build an HTML file. Say first is the your search is, and here we use double braces to say URL here. Another P. The cop name is the name. Maybe here you can use a strong to make it bold. So here we can do the same thing. Okay, that's the page. That's the page. You want to ear back to the API. Let's refresh that. Okay, come to here. Only thing we need to change is instead of API, we say API page. See, your search is this, and the club name is that. Right, see how simple it is. You can interact with the Python data and your page easily. Right, the more you understand both in Python and HTML, the better you can perform here. Okay, so last thing is you can just debug as regular Python code in your process. For example, I can set a breakpoint here before we call the neo. You can stop here, and if you do this, when people click on the URL, you go to the URL, it will stop here. Stop here. But before you run that, you can also go to the debug console to check what is URL, right? What is query, right? So that will give you the benefit to change your code, find the bugs, perform. Okay, that's all for today's session about the Flask. If you have more questions, just let me know. See you.